Michael Scotto of HoopsHype is on the line right now. Michael, how much or what was the decision process like of I'm about to come on the Raptor show? Should I tweet this out or should I break it on the show with the Orlando Robinson and the Jared Rhoden news?
I'm not always the best at multitasking on that stuff. I apologize.
It's all right, man.
I love how, you know what? I knew the second you asked me to come on here, produce at me, that something like this would happen. Obviously, it's the last day for two ways. So, I know. Kyrie Irving, Jalen Suggs out for you. Nah, we're rolling right with Orlando Robinson and
me, man.
Jared
That's
Rhoden.
my sweet spot. All the little cat maneuvers and stuff like that. Anyone can talk about Kyrie Irving tearing his ACL.
Can we take a moment to acknowledge how addicting HoopsHype is as a website?
Yeah.
Like
that's all Scotto, man.
I like have to check it every morning to see if I don't know what it is about it. Get my dopamine hit. I don't know.
There you go. That's you. So Michael, what is obviously today's the last day for two ways and that stuff's important. I dig it. Some of these guys turn into, legitimate NBA players. But what is it like in your role where you're coming off the trade deadline where everything is so big and so much stuff is happening? And, your latest notebook was a lot of hey, here's some stuff that didn't happen, but maybe got talked about, or here's some stuff that might happen in July. What is this time of year like for you?
Well, it's like coming off the highway at about 70, 75 miles an hour and then going down to the local streets a little bit and bringing it down to the speed limit maybe is like 40 or so. But it's all good. I mean, look, all these moves matter. Trust me, to agents and to NBA executives around the league, and obviously us as reporters and you as well, Blake. I mean, you've been on this reporting as far as what would happen with Toronto as well. We live in that world. All those spots matter. There's only, 450 of them, I forget. There's not a ton in the world. And I'm pretty sure anybody, the average person would love to have a two-way spot, let alone a 10-day contract or something for the rest of the season. So there's a lot of competition for those spots, definitely around the league.
Yeah, it's fun. It's it's a payoff. It's a nice payoff for me as someone who watches the G League games and stuff like that to see Jared Rhoden get the nod or
Malachi Flynn.
Yeah, Malachi Flynn and Jalen McDaniels on 10 days. Bismack gets a rest of the season.
Is it Mo Bamba in the G League?
I don't know where Mo Bamba is
right
now.
He is.
And Matt, Malachi had a 50-point game in the NBA last year. I mean, that just goes to show you how much competition there is for these type of spots. Well done on you there to mention that.
Yeah, it's fun. It's
the fellow redhead.
There you go, fellow redhead, and who knows? Maybe fellow Florida guy Colin Castleton is going to be the next one to get a 10-day or something like this.
Might get one with Toronto. We'll see, boy.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows, Michael? Okay, so Raptors related from your latest notebook. I just want to we don't need to go too deep on this because it's a July conversation, but you did have the subheading, what does the acquisition of Brandon Ingram mean for RJ Barrett? We just talked to Michael Grange about Barrett's kind of growth this year. What is your sense of that? Obviously, I got the read from your piece that a couple other teams are at least maybe RJ would be available. What does that look like? What is your read on RJ right now?
Yeah, look, I think, Blake, as far as RJ goes, to me what was interesting was, as I had reported, Toronto had several conversations with New Orleans about Brandon Ingram. Ultimately, the one with a first-round pick and Bruce Brown's expiring contract and stretch 5, Kelly Olynyk got it done. But there was a conversation where RJ Barrett was brought up. And for New Orleans, it didn't make sense because they have Herb Jones and Trey Murphy on the wing. But me reading the tea leaves from that signaled that maybe there's a question of whether you can have Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, and RJ Barrett all fit cohesively for the Toronto Raptors. Clearly, Toronto has made significant financial commitments to Scotty Barnes, the face of their franchise, and now Brandon Ingram. So for RJ Barrett, it's an interesting dynamic because he's having a career year. He's averaging the most points, rebounds, and assists of his career and really grown as a playmaker. But for Toronto overall, obviously, they're towards the bottom of the standings. And looking ahead, they don't want to have a long rebuild. The hope is that they can have a high pick in this draft and somewhat retool the roster, I think is more of the correct phrase. And, with Grady Dick at shooting guard, it's a question really of where RJ Barrett would fit long term. He's got a couple of years left on his deal at a movable salary. a lot of guys in the $20 to $25 million range can be moved. There's a lot of guys around the league with that salary. So I think his name is going to be certainly one that executives are watching around the league going into the summer.
All right. About a move that we thought happened.
But what do you want for it? That's the thing.
Like if you're the Raptors,
yeah.
you mean? I mean, part of the idea would be to get you out of the luxury or give you like more breathing room to operate the rest of your offseason.
This is like what the trade deadline story was. It was like the new CBA was the story. Like it caused all these trades.
Yeah, I mean, the CBA is always going to be like underlying it a little bit. And the easy answer is like, well, you could just pay the tax. And then like that solves itself, but we don't know if the Raptors are going to do that or if you try to turn RJ into, a pick and a cheaper player or something like that.
A lot of teams are moving away from that, guys. I think a lot of teams, Matt, I think you brought up a good point, whereas for some owners, like look at the Pelicans, for example, they don't pay the tax. They just don't. Certain teams, like look at the second apron, for example, as a de facto hard cap. They will not go over it. And so when you're operating in those parameters, I think that's why you're seeing some of these multi-team, 3-4 team deals where everybody's trying to get a piece of the pie. And if you're a team like Toronto was, Detroit, where you can be a facilitator, it's an advantageous position where you can get pretty much some second-round picks, maybe even a first-round pick, depending on what type of salary you're taking long-term. Yeah,
it's not the sexiest to be making the financially motivated moves, but yeah, you're not going to get a player as good as RJ Barrett back for RJ Barrett if that's your point.
Doesn't this just point out or like show how many players are overpaid if this is how it is?
I mean,
or signed under the old system and now they're overpaid in the new system, because if so many teams are willing to take on salary just to get extra picks or whatever. I mean, it means they're overpaid, right?
I don't know if it means they're overpaid or that the money means different things to different teams depending on where you are in the competitive. Like if you are like a 40-win team, that maybe $25 million for this player is great. If you're a 20-win team, you care more about the flexibility. If you're a 60-win team, you're too high into the tax to pay that amount. I think it's moving more toward like, I'll use a fantasy sports term, like a stars and scrubs kind of model where it's that second tier of guys who are borderline all-stars but not superstars. And that's where it's going to be awkward to price.
You got to pay these. You got to pay someone.
Yeah.
So if you don't get one of the guys that's actually worth the contract, that's not good.
Yeah, it's
in this new system.
It's going to be tough. It'll be interesting to see how this and nobody has cap space this offseason other than like the real bad teams. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Michael, wanted to rewind with you, do something that we thought happened and didn't happen. I know you had a blurb about this in your latest HoopsHype notebook. Did we ever get any like real clarity on what the issue with Mark Williams was from the Lakers side? Like the Hornets have said, "Hey, welcome back, buddy. We love you." Jeff Schwartz, his representation, has said, "We think he passed the medicals." What can you make of that situation?
Well, I would say it's certainly a difference of opinion. And I think the funny thing about Charlotte that you brought up is they had this whole press release about, well, first of all, the funniest shade was the other team. They mentioned the other team. They don't even say the Lakers because they were so upset that they rescinded the deal. But they talked about how they didn't want to move Mark, but they made such a big offer and they couldn't refuse, like the Godfather came to them. But my thing is essentially after that happened, they still tried to talk to the league to have the deal go through and to challenge that rescinding from the Lakers. So all this to me, again, is about, okay, now big picture, you have a decision with Mark Williams, who has missed some games since he's returned, ironically. You can read into that certainly, why. But if you're missing games and now you have to figure out an extension with Charlotte, it's a bit murky in that sense because they literally traded the guy and then now he's back. And it's like, well, if you don't, then you go into restricted free agency. And basically it also said to me about Charlotte, and I touched on this on some of the other guys and some executives around the league are looking too. Well, if you were willing to part with Mark Williams, who's 23 and pretty good, yeah, he's got some injury concerns. The next logical thing would be you also got to look at LaMelo Ball, who's on a max contract. They're not winning, obviously, for the foreseeable future right now. And for LaMelo, he wants to win. So how much longer? This is now going to be the 5th season.
Does he?
That's what I've been told. And I'll say this, Matt. Look, at the end of the day, I also think not being an all-star and not winning affected him not being an all-star with Charlotte. He had on paper the numbers. So he wants to win competitively from what I've told. And
listen,
also
there's a difference between wanting to win for the 48 minutes during the game. You got to want to win all the rest of the day too, in the preparation, in the offseason, and everything. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
It's all encompassing if you want to win. You can't be like, I just want to win when the game's going on. Everybody wants to win when the game's going on.
Yeah. It's
anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay. Michael, I did have one more for you before we let you go here. I know it's a busy day for you. I haven't got to the part in the notebook yet.
Wait, he didn't answer your question. He didn't answer your question. What was wrong with Mark Williams?
He answered it to the best he can. It's a he said thing.
Listen, this is I've had this happen.
I'm not asking Michael to like go check out Mark Williams' shoulder and knee.
I've been Los Angeles Lakered before. I sold my house in the mountains in New Hampshire, or I thought I did, and they came in and did the inspection and are like, "Oh, this is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. We need all this money back." And it's like, no, they just blew up the deal. They did the same thing to me. That's all this is.
Yeah.
It's like a house inspection. Yeah. And they're just like, well, all this is wrong. We don't want it anymore.
Yeah. The difference being there's no house trade deadline. And then after that, the Lakers can't go get a center. And now they got to play Jackson Hayes.
Matt, the ironic thing was Anthony Davis was banging the table for a center for years. And then they ship him out and then they go get the center too.
Yeah. How's he feel?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Okay, Michael, very last one. How was the chat with Yabu? I haven't got to that part in the notebook yet. Guerschon Yabusele seems like a gem.
Oh, he's terrific. I love his personality. For Guerschon Yabusele, basically the crux of it is that the whole time he's been overseas, it's been a 6-year hiatus since he was with the Boston Celtics. He had a couple times where he thought he was close, and he was always holding on to hope that he would return. The French Olympics helped him kind of move that needle this past summer. And now looking ahead, he was highly coveted at the trade deadline. He had probably about, I think it was like 5 to 7 teams that were in the mix. And now in the offseason, teams are going to be looking to go after him as well. This could be a guy that approaches near, somewhere in the non-tax mid-level range. I mean, he's played really well. Philadelphia certainly made some moves at the trade deadline to save some future salary and to, part of that is to hopefully try to re-sign Yabusele, who has loved it there. But he did tell me it's going to be a decision that he's going to have to take some time on. Obviously, he's going to have a lot of suitors, so we'll see what direction he ends up going.
Every time we talk about him, it reminds me of the Taylor Swift song, "This is the Last Great American Dynasty." Mm-hmm. Like, this is the last real legit power forward in existence in basketball.
Yeah.
Like, the power forward when I played does not exist except him. I just get PTSD every time I watch him, thinking about boxing him out at the foul line.
Yeah, he'd be your worst enemy. Michael, heard your phone going off. Go give us some Colin Castleton news or something like that. Thanks for joining, buddy.
It's you or me, brother, but certainly possible he gets a 10-day with Toronto.
Or somewhere. Yeah, thanks, Michael. Really appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks, Michael.
Anytime, guys. Thank you.
Michael Scotto of HoopsHype. I expect the Raptors to use their open roster